Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS community. It is a group run by Warren Jeffs. I moved out of that community when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS, and Sam and I have been married for almost 8 years and have 2 beautiful babies.
Yes, we do. As you can see, we have new mics finally.
Yay!
So I hope this helps, and we apologize for any inconvenience with the previous sound quality issues that we've had in the past.
Yeah, we had tried Lear mics, we tried a different mic, and we were like, let's just upgrade the whole thing.
We finally said, you know what, we need podcast material, so here we are. Hopefully you can hear us okay now.
Yes. And real quick, just one item of business that we're super excited to share about is we actually have, for the first time, an opportunity to share our story live. And that is going to be in Southern Utah in St. George. It's going to be Sunday, June 26th at 1 p.m. We will leave a link in the description for it. But if you are in the Southern Utah area, we're going to be coming up from Las Vegas. So I guess if anyone's in Las Vegas too and wants a nice Sunday drive and wants to come up.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. We're going to be up there sharing our story. It's going to be with a post-Mormon group. But you do not have to be post-Mormon to come. We would still love to see you. We know there are going to be active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints there as well. So Everyone is welcome. We are going to be sharing our story of our spiritual journey in leaving the LDS Church. And just a little bit more about us. And then there's also going to be a Q&A at the end to be able to answer anybody's questions that they have about it.
Yes, we're excited to meet a few people and have this opportunity. It's once again, like all of our content, we're not going to be there talking negatively or bashing on anyone's belief, but just more sharing our experience and our story. So
and hopefully being hopeful and encouraging to anyone who is in a faith journey. No matter where it leads, honestly, having a faith journey can be hard, and no matter where it takes you, we'd love to be able to be support for people.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway, again, there will be a link in the description to give more information on that and the Facebook event that's coordinating with that. But of course, we would love to see anybody who is in the area and who is interested in coming and saying hi.
Yes, come on by. We'd love to see you. And without further ado, you've all had a very good question for quite some time now that we would like to answer for you today.
Yes.
So a lot of comments have been, what is it like? What were funerals like in the FLDS community?
So unfortunately, recently, one of Sam's mothers did pass away. It was Father's first wife, so not Sam's biological mother, but obviously still one of his mothers. Mm-hmm. And we'll kind of go into a little bit of what we were able to be a part of or not a part of, and then also talk about your memories as a child actually going to funerals out there as well, and kind of what the norm is. Yeah,
so obviously this most recent experience was very different than what I was used to growing up, because now that I'm no longer a part of the community, as you can imagine, I am not allowed to be a part of a lot of the things that go on within the community. So anyway, so definitely very different from this experience was definitely unique. I'll just say that.
I have to say, first of all, we were actually just like very happy that we heard about her passing, mm-hmm. and that there was communication at all, because sometimes it's hard to know like what things we are going to have communicated to us and what things we aren't, where there is that disconnect. And so the fact that Sam was able to hear that what had happened and funeral details at all was it's very good, right?
Yes, exactly. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking in the back of my mind. I think, man, what if something horrible happened to even one of the younger siblings or something, and I just never heard about it, right? Because it's we don't hear about many things that go on within the community anymore. So anyway, so yes, we are very happy to hear about it and have at least some some time spent with that experience, and at least be able to say goodbye.
So going into it, I guess first coming from being an apostate or no longer a member of the FLDS church, do you want to kind of go through the things that we were able to be a part of and why we were separated from the rest of the community?
Yeah, so really, we were basically they held a special viewing for the members or for the family members that had left the community, and so we were at least able to go and see her in her casket and spend some time with several of the members of the family. Not many of those that still believe were there, but a couple were that still follow Warren Jeffs were there, and we were able to say some our goodbyes and give our condolences and all of that to those members and spend some time. So it was very nice to be able to have that at least time to say goodbye. But that was really all we were able to do. Yeah, we weren't invited to the funeral, the actual service, and the burial. That was something that we were not allowed to attend.
Yeah, so the special viewing, as far as the regular funeral part, because again, that's the viewing, the fact that we were able to have one, we felt very happy, very honored to be able to do that. But as far as a regular funeral goes, how does that normally work out there?
So getting to what it was like growing up in the FLDS community as a young boy and into my teenage years, I unfortunately went to many funerals. Some of those family members and some just really good friends, and others that I didn't know that well, but we were all so close as a community that whenever there was a funeral, everyone was invited. Everyone, I don't know if you would say it was expected to go, but it just seemed like most members of the community would go to any funeral for someone in that community.
That's nice.
Yeah, so it was definitely, like I say, a tight-knit community. So everyone came together, and so first of all, I guess I'll say there are two different cemeteries out there in the Hilldale and Colorado City cities, and there's one that's for children. I believe it was for anyone under the age of 8, and then the other one was for all of the 8 and older, obviously. And anyway, so that was there were two different sites. And really, it was just like a big, almost like a Sunday service meeting. It was just it wasn't always held on Sunday though, but the community would come together. There would typically be a viewing line where the casket would be set up at the front of the meeting house, the same meeting house that we would have our other meetings. And the family would kind of line both sides of the casket. And then there would be lines of people all the way down the hallway, sometimes out the door of the meeting house, lining up to go and walk through and shake the family's hands, give our hugs and condolences, and see whoever it was in the casket that had passed on. So anyway, it was a pretty big deal, a lot of time spent. The funeral service itself was typically an hour, 2 hours long.
Did they have like a dedicatory prayer as they did in the LDS?
At the funeral,
gravesite.
At the gravesite, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was just going to say, because I just realized as you were saying that might not, I don't know, leave in the comments whether or not what religions have different prayers, or if there's any special traditions at the gravesite. But for the LDS, and obviously the FLDS as well, priesthood holders dedicate the grave before the person's buried. But I am kind of curious what other traditions or what other kind of, if there's special prayers in your religion, then please let us know in the comments, because I'm curious.
Yes, there was definitely, that was a big part of it. But before that, and even before the actual funeral service, the viewing would sometimes go on for hours, just because not only was the whole community sometimes there to see and go and walk through this line and shake the hands of the family members, but the family member line, because the families are so big out there, it was, I mean, you were walking through and shaking hands as a young boy. It felt like a full hour just shaking hands and saying hello to people, and sometimes to people I didn't know very well, but we still went to these funerals. But anyway, it was generally a good experience. I mean, there was a lot of singing and talking about the good things of the individual's life and all of that. So, but yes, the funerals were typically, maybe I'm exaggerating because I was a young boy, but it seemed like the funerals were very long. But It was, I never remember ever having a negative experience. It was always as positive as a funeral service can be.
Do you know why they separated the children under 8? Was it about the age of accountability?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea why there are two separate graveyards. And I also couldn't say for certainty if any of the children were buried in the graveyard that was full for older people, I guess. But I couldn't say for sure.
Huh. Just because, for those of you who aren't familiar, one thing that does separate the LDS and the FLDS church is that they don't believe in the original sin of Adam. So, for instance, like Catholics, babies you're baptized as a baby to get rid of Adam and Eve's original sin, meaning that we're all born into sin. But the LDS and the FLDS believe that you cannot sin until you're at the age of accountability, which is 8 years old. And that is why the LDS and the FLDS baptize their children at 8, because it's the age of accountability. So the fact that they had a special grave site for those who were younger than 8, I'm guessing is tied in somewhere like that. Something to do with the age of accountability, meaning that I'd always heard, and you have to tell me if that's what you heard as well, but if a child died before they turned 8, they immediately went straight to the celestial kingdom because they were completely pure and never had a chance to sin.
Yes, celestial kingdom meaning straight back to live God. In Heavenly Father, God's presence.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is the same thing I was taught. And so I'm sure it had something to do with that they were put in a separate graveyard because they are perfect and they had no sin. Maybe that had something to do with it. If I was told, I don't remember anything about that specifically being told to me.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to ask too. So, I mean, overall, at least compared to LDS, it's very similar in the way that they hold their funerals. Mm-hmm. And then obviously now we know that we would be able to have viewings. But if something was to happen to someone who had left, do you want to talk about whether or not you'd be allowed to be buried out there in that cemetery with the FLDS after having left the LDS? Like, could we be buried out there?
So the answer to that question is yes. And the reason I know that is because, unfortunately, one of my brothers and his family recently passed away. It's been a couple of years now, but in a horrible accident. And so, anyway, because of that experience, I know that is okay because they were buried in the graveyard or cemetery in Colorado City. So that, I mean, and they were no longer a part of the church. They had left many, many years ago.
Is that where you would want us to be buried someday?
I don't know. I haven't thought enough about that.
I mean, in the case of Sam's brother, because him and his wife and their son all passed away in the same accident, you know, the choices that were made as to where they were buried kind of went back to your father and her father, right?
I believe so, and I don't know that he had a will. Yeah. I'm not sure.
So it kind of like made sense, but yeah, I don't know. We're going to be airing out family decisions right here on YouTube, deciding whether or not we would get buried with his family.
I'm not sure. That's a great question that I have not thought much about, and hopefully something we don't have to think about anytime soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. Maybe we'll keep you guys posted as we decide where we would. All my family is buried back east. And like in different cemeteries and stuff. And so
I'm sure the cemeteries there are a lot more green. So do you want to be buried in green or desert? That's the question.
That's the question. Okay. Well, anyway, on to the next topic.
Enough of that. Okay. So, but I was going to share just a little bit of what it was like, actually, the experience in the FLDS, going to the cemetery and what that was like. So after our lengthy funeral services, we would all get into our cars and follow the hearse to the cemetery, which was you could walk probably there in 5 minutes, but we all chose to take our cars for some reason, and it would take probably some people did walk though. There were families looked like, football teams, many football teams actually, because there were a lot of families that would choose to walk, and so that you would see crowds of people walking from the meeting house up to the grave sites. But a lot of people would drive, and those that chose to drive, it would take them 6 times as long to get there because there were so many cars and everyone was in line that it took a long time to get that very short distance. But we would all work our way up to the cemetery, and then we would park our vehicles, or those that walked, we would gather around the burial site, and there were typically some special numbers. Some people would sing some songs, sometimes songs that were the favorite songs of the person or people that have passed on. And then after that, there was a dedicatory prayer, and that was a very important part of it. That was probably the most important part to the church members.
And that had to be given by a priesthood holder from the church.
Correct.
And it was the same in the LDS.
Correct. Yes. And it typically was given not necessarily by the father of the person, but generally by a leader of the church that had a high calling, like a patriarch, for example.
Gotcha.
Or someone that held a high position within church leadership. So,
okay. But
yes, that was really it. And at the end of the prayer, then everyone just kind of said their goodbyes and dispersed from there. So, and that was really it. So I don't know that it's much different than, I know that there's many different ways to do burial services and all of that, and funerals, but from what I've seen both in the FLDS and in the LDS, it's similar. It just, there were a lot more people involved in the FLDS, as you can imagine.
Yeah, that's very similar. Yeah. I'm sure some people are going to have the question, does anyone out there ever get cremated?
Oh, to my knowledge, no.
I can't imagine they would, just to clear the air on that question, because same with the LDS, they believe in a literal resurrection. And so as far as I was told growing up, like, cremation wasn't really, not an option, but it was never talked about as an option. It
was in the FLDS. It was definitely looked down on. So the only things I ever heard about that were just negative, that it shouldn't be done for their religious beliefs. Yeah. So I cannot say if anyone ever did, if they decided to go outside the lines of what they were taught and do that. I don't know for sure, but not that I know of.
Okay. Yeah. And that's the same with the LDS, but just wanted to throw that out there in case that was going to be a comment to come. So
yes. Yeah. So anyway, not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, unfortunately, I experienced a lot of funerals, both family and friends, and that was always hard to go through, but they tried to focus on the positive things because they believe that there is life after this. And so they would just focus on the fact that we will see them again. We will be together again. There's no point in living sad forever because of this, but let's continue on with our life, and soon we will see them and be reunited. So that was kind of the overall message that they would give.
Yeah, well, thanks, babe.
Which is a good message.
Yeah. Well, if you guys want to hear more of what it was like for Sam growing up in polygamy, then please like and subscribe. And we will now be continuing to put these videos on our podcast as well on Spotify and on Google Podcasts. So feel free to look it up there.
Yes, and thank you very much for being here. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.